Imagine this. You're in a meeting and someone raises a real concern. Not a complaint, not resistance, but a legitimate question about whether the approach is actually working, whether the people on the ground are being considered, whether the cost of this particular initiative is showing up in ways leadership hasn't accounted for. And before they even finish the sentence, someone at the table says, "I just want to make sure we're all aligned on why we're here." Or, "I think we have to trust the process and stay focused on the mission." Or the quieter version, that dreadful look, the slight pause, the energy shifting that tells everyone in a room exactly what just happened. The question didn't get answered, you see, it got managed. And the person who asked it, they got the message, loud, in a language that doesn't show up in any policy manual. Now, let's flip it if you're on the leadership side and you're the one that's leading the room. Someone pushed back on a direction you've already decided on. In fact, you came to the room with your decision made. You just thought that you would show up for consensus sake and make it look like you wanted other people's opinions. And you didn't have a great answer for their question or their pushback. So instead of sitting with the discomfort of being challenged, you reframed their pushback as a cultural problem. You talked about commitment. You talked about the work being bigger than any one person's reservations. You talked about the mission. And it worked. The room got quiet. You moved on. You see, both of those moments are the same thing. They're just from different angles. Today, we're talking about the mission as a muzzle. Welcome to Strong Face, the podcast for leaders caught between caring for their people and enforcing a system that wasn't built to do so without losing themselves in the process. I'm your host, Tamara Stewart, and in each episode, I take a real situation leaders face at work and show what's actually broken and what's yours to fix. Now, real quick before we get into it, I have to do my disclaimer, and it's all about the tea. See, I like to dish, but I don't spill the tea on what my clients have told me. I talk about real people and real situations and real dynamics, pressures that leaders face, but I don't name names, I don't violate confidences, and I don't tell somebody's business on this here microphone because it's not that I don't have the stories. Trust me, believe me when I tell you, I have the stories. But it's because it's unprofessional and it's not who I am. And honestly, I just don't think it's cute. Now, what I will do is tell you the truth about the patterns, the moments, and the feelings that people go through every day, because those belong to all of us. Okay? Now let's just get into it. Here's what this looks like. It looks like the all-hands meeting where someone asks a pointed question about a recent decision, and the answer has nothing to do with the question. It's a story about impact, a slide about vision, a reminder of how far the organization has come. But the question disappears inside of that very long-winded answer. And everyone watches it happen. Nobody says anything. We all move on. And nobody wants to be the next person that happens to. It looks like a performance review where your concerns about a process get reframed as a mindset issue. You're told that you need to be more solutions focused. You need to be more positive. You need to be a carrier of the culture. The feedback isn't about your work. It's about your willingness to stop asking the hard questions. It looks like the team meeting where someone raises a real tension that they're grappling with, something that's genuinely affecting the way that people are doing the work. And the leader responds with an origin story. Why this organization exists. What it stands for. What's at stake if everyone doesn't get on board and stay focused? And the person who raised the concern is still sitting there nodding because they are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing, going along to get along. It looks like the senior leader who uses language of purpose and values fluently, generously, and also selectively. When things are going well, it's we. And when things are questioned or challenged, it's you. Are you really committed to what we're building here? Those are the kinds of questions that get asked. The mission is a shared thing right up until it becomes a measuring stick. And it looks like you, The leader who is stuck in the middle of the hard conversations between your leadership and your team, reaching for the mission because you don't necessarily have a better answer. Not because you're dishonest, but because you're stuck, trying to balance the in-between. And the mission is right there, and it works. And you tell yourself it's not the same thing. Oh, but it is. So here's what you and your team may be feeling. The people on the receiving end of this, they don't always have the language for what it is that they are experiencing. They just know that they raised up something that was an important point or an important question to them, and they walked away feeling like they did something wrong. It's a specific kind of disorientation where you came in good faith. You were bought in. In fact, you raised the question because you wanted to make sure that the thing that you were going after would be better. You asked a fair question. And somehow you left the room, you left the meeting, you left the conversation as the problem. Over time, those people who were once bought in, they stopped asking. Not because they stopped caring, but because they did the math. And that math said to them that it costs more to ask the question than it does to stay quiet. The people wielding the mission this way, and this is the part I know in every episode I do, I talk about compassion and I talk about the other side of the coin. I talk about the empathy that we have to have. But it's true. The people who do this, they're not necessarily cynical. They're not necessarily trying to beat people over the head with the mission. They may even love the work and feel like dissent slows things down, and they're so focused on getting the thing done that they lose people along the way. In their mind, they are actually protecting what they think is important. That sincerity is real. It just makes this particular dynamic harder to name because the way that it shows up is stifling in teams and organizations. And the silence is deafening. It feels like alignment, but what it actually does is it breaks you down to the point where you can't have any kind of critical challenge going on, which means that you are going to be siloed in your thought processes eventually. And the very mission that you're going after, you're probably not going to meet as effectively as you could have had you had the dissent in the room. And it's you, my middle manager, my leader that's caught in the middle, feeling the particular type of exhaustion that comes when you're trying to balance the expectations above you. And you've swallowed your reservations, you've held in your own questions because you've seen it play out time after time, and you don't want you to be labeled that way, and you certainly don't want your team to be labeled that way. But you're also having to go back and face the same team that brought questions to you that you weren't able to come back with an answer for. And you may realize that you might be one of those people who's guilty of doing the very same thing. You might have used the mission to muzzle the team because you didn't have the time, the effort, or the energy that particular day to lock horns in the struggle. It's complicated. And oftentimes when we are faced with complicated things as leaders, we try to push over them so that we can go back to doing the work because the work feels easier, not realizing that if we don't deal with the hard thing, the complicated thing, it will eventually get in the way of the way we do the work. Now, let's talk about why it happens. You see, mission-driven organizations, they carry a particular vulnerability that purely transactional ones just don't. People a lot of times join these organizations because they care about the mission. They want to see that thing which they deem to be general good, public good, overall good, or good for a particular demographic. They want to see that thing accomplished. And when people believe in the work, when that belief is a part of what holds the culture together and is why people are aligned, dissent is more than just a challenging question. It feels like a structural threat, not just an inconvenience, but an actual risk to why everyone is in the room doing the thing that they're doing, to the thing that everyone is invested in. So the system learns through time that not through any single decision, but through accumulated habit to try to protect the mission from scrutiny. So a challenge to a question or a way of doing things, to a process, is not about necessarily the process itself. It becomes about the mission and a threat to the organization as a whole. And we sometimes conflate these two things, and we're not able to recognize that Just because I have a question with an approach that we're taking doesn't mean that I don't believe in why we're here and why we're doing the thing that we're doing. I'm just questioning how we're going about doing it. So what happens is people who ask these tough questions, they get labeled. They get moved out of the inner circle. They get uninvited to the meetings where the decisions are being made. They get left off of the emails. Have you ever been a part of an email chain, a thread, and it was going on and on and on, and then just magically one day you fell off and you're thinking, didn't that person use reply to all when they responded? How is my name magically left off of this? And maybe you found out because someone thought that you should have been there and they added you back, or you were in a meeting with some people and they started talking about something and you were a part of the earlier parts of the conversation and you're thinking, wait a minute, I don't remember seeing that. So you go and you look for the evidence and then you circle back to the person who brought it up and you're like, hey, where did you get that? And they tell you, oh, it was in the email that Sally sent on Tuesday. And you realize you didn't have an email from Sally on Tuesday. So you ask, do you mind forwarding that to me? And then you get all the deets that you have been missing because somebody, I'm not going to say it was Sally, but somebody took you off the email thread. It's disorienting. It's hurtful. It's harmful to the organization. And it's alienating to the person on the receiving end of that because you raised the question because you cared about the solution. And so if you're leading people and this is going on, you may have been in rooms where people who ask too many questions get labeled as villains. They are the ones that are labeled and dubbed the difficult people. They don't share the same values as the team. They are contentious for contentious sake. And so we start assigning value and labels to people because they ask tough questions. And that creates an environment where we stifle innovation because we make it unsafe to ask questions. What you end up having is not necessarily a mission-driven culture where the mission is the focus and being in alignment is what everybody is there to do. What you end up having is a compliance culture by proxy. People are going along to get along. The mission may still be being accomplished, but it's not necessarily being accomplished in the most effective or efficient way. And the people who have been dubbed the difficult ones, they're disengaging over time because someone told them the truth about what was said in the room that they were no longer invited in. Someone told them about the talent discussion where they were labeled as a problem because they asked the wrong leader on the right day, the wrong set of questions. And so that person starts to become alienated and bitter, disengaged. They see that the train is about to come off the tracks and that there might be problems up ahead, but they sit in the room and they doodle on their paper and they don't say anything because they've calculated the cost and it costs too much. And they're there at the end of the day to make a living and they don't want anything to come in the way of allowing them to be able to do that. So they passively go along. This is not the type of organization that thrives. This is the type of organization that teaches silent passivity as a way to be liked. People who are yes people, you know, your good old yes people, the people who just think every idea is a great idea. Let me be clear. Every idea is not a great idea. The whole purpose of having a team and having multiple voices in a room and having diversity is so that you get the collective benefit of all of the minds that are in the room. So if every time a person comes up with something and it's a great idea, or the same person time after time after time is saying, oh, that's a great idea, let's go after it, I, as a leader, begin to question whether or not that person has leadership courage to challenge. Because I don't want people around me to only tell me that my ideas are great. I want people around me as a leader that are going to challenge what I come up with, that are going to bring solutions to me, that are going to bring problems to me with potential solutions so that we can get out ahead of the things that could potentially hold us back. So if you are a leader and you have people on your team who just think everything is great all the time, challenge them to be more challenging because it's actually healthy. Speaking of things that you as a leader can do, you can start looking up at your leadership ranks, the people who are giving you the directives and the go-dos. Are you in an environment where you can challenge appropriately, where you can raise a legitimate concern, that you can name what you are observing directly and without accusation or consequence or retribution? Because if you're not, that type of leadership mentality can roll downhill, and you could be absorbing some of the lack of safety that you are then modeling for your own people. Are you in a situation where you are being encouraged to not question things and to just be a passive participant? Or are you in leadership discussions with your leadership team and with your peers where there is healthy discourse to get to the best solution to a problem? And once you've done that, then look at your own team and the rooms that you are cultivating and fostering. Are you creating conditions where people can raise concerns and where approaches can be questioned, where policies can be questioned, and it's not looked at as a commitment issue, but it's actually encouraged and praised and valued? Are you saying those things expressly and explicitly and out loud? Or are you making mental notes? Are you telling your team that you want to know what's working well, but you also want to know what's not working at all? Are you asking for the hard spots? Or are you having the kind of meetings where when you go and everybody's doing their report out, everyone's telling all the good news that happened last week, but nobody's talking about the things that are struggles or concerns or issues or fire alarms that need to be addressed? Have you ever sat in a meeting and you go around the room and everybody's giving their update and it's all great news? Everything is a yay situation. And you walk out of the room and you wonder, is anybody struggling the way that I am? Like, what's going on? Am I in the same company as everybody else? Like, what's going on here? What are you doing as a leader to create opportunities for people to tell you what's not working? And then, are you framing your language in a way where people understand that just because they bring a concern, a challenge, or even a complaint, that it's not an indication of whether or not they are on the bus? I like that. Everybody should get on the bus. Where did that even come from, I wonder? We should get on the bus. Well, what happens if the bus is busted? What happens if the bus is got 2 flat tires and a smoking engine? Is anybody going to fix it, or we all just going to be on the bus waiting to try to get somewhere? Once you look at the way that you're leading, I want you to look inward. I want you to ask yourself whether or not you've used purpose language, mission language, to end a conversation where you weren't comfortable. A conversation that deserved to have more space, more discourse, more conversation. I want you to ponder whether or not you are okay with sitting in your own discomfort and whether or not you encourage questions, or if you even have the emotional maturity and the fortitude to not take it personal when you are challenged or when something that you roll out gets challenged. Or have you commingled your identity into what it is that you do so that anytime someone challenges or questions what is being done, you take it as a direct violation against you? We as leaders should be looking inwardly a lot. We should have time on our calendar for reflection. We should have time on our calendar for planning. We should be able to do debriefs and hear from our team about events and initiatives and projects, what went well and what didn't, without looking at it as a personal affront against us. We should be creating space for that. And if you're not creating space for that, I want you to do some internal work looking at how you frame your identity, what you assert value to as it relates to your worthiness and your acumen as a leader. Or have you mixed up some things? You see, a mission cannot survive honest questions if it's not a strong mission. If it is a strong mission, it should be able to withstand and hold up to scrutiny. If it's fragile, then we need to protect it by silence. But if it's strong, it should be able to stand on its own. And leaders who build things that actually last are the ones who let the hard questions in. They build something that is foolproof because they allow scrutiny. They trust that scrutiny and commitment can coexist. And they understand that the person who's asking the uncomfortable question is not necessarily a threat, but they may be one of the most invested people that's sitting at the table or sitting in the meeting. Ask yourself, what questions have sat silent in my team? And is it because things were just going so great that there were no concerns or complaints to be raised? Or was it because I created an environment where people calculated the cost and the cost of concern was too high? People don't check out and stop caring overnight. What they do is they observe the way we move as leaders over time, and they reframe and they assess and they make decisions about how they are going to start or stop showing up based on what we consistently do and what they see. One redirected question is not necessarily going to stifle all innovation within your organization. But if you have a pattern of shutting people down and using the mission of an organization to keep people in their place, you use it as a muzzle so that you move forward with your idea because you think your idea is the best idea that ever was, what you're going to find is a team that starts to check out swiftly, one by one or collectively over time as they watch you demonstrate those leadership behaviors. You get to decide what type of team and what type of organization you run. You get to decide how you show up. And if you are the type of leader that's using culture language to stifle critique, I implore you, I encourage you, I beseech you, as some would say, to reconsider your approach. Put down the strong face. Learn to let the question land. It is a muscle that has to be developed. Allow the question space to breathe. Let people sit with it for a pause, for a moment, for a beat. See what gets built when you have the courage to do so. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people you lead. Thanks for listening to Strong Face. If this episode resonated with you, or it sounds like a familiar story you've heard from a friend at happy hour, subscribe and share it with them. We can continue to unpack these things together.